I just want to know, if this happens, what do I do?
Yep.
Because as a business owner, especially if you spend $1 million on a certain piece of equipment, I can't be thinking in the back of my mind, what if my team messes this up every single day? I need them to be more trained than anybody else in the entire world.
So that's where I say also less is more. Focus on what they need to know, not on the nice to know. That's one of my biggest things. And you'll hear that everywhere I go. Let's focus on the need to know and let's put the nice to know in a guide.
All right, welcome back to the Inside the Creator Studio podcast. I am joined here by Elisa Cruickshank of EC Learning and Designs. She specializes in custom learning for businesses and training. So love to have you here inside the Creator Studio.
Oh, thank you for having me, James.
Yeah,
Appreciate
absolutely.
it.
So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
So my name is Elisa Cruickshank, and I am the founder of Easy Designs for Learning. And what I do is, as an instructional designer, I design custom learning solutions for businesses, whether it is for their clients, whether it is for their internal teams.
Cool. So where did you kind of get your start with training and what kind of led you down this path?
So I think, it really started my time in banking. The terrible training, right? The training that you just kind of hit the button and you start and then you walk away, and I'm guilty of it. And you come back just to hit the next till it's over, it ends. And that was it was a very painful experience. So putting two and two together, I realized, people are not getting what they need and they're leaving. And these are good people that have the will. They just don't have the resources. They're not given the resources.
Absolutely. And like, you're losing a lot of people on potential, where now you're kind of running everything like a robot, and, people that could think out of the box are suddenly like, oh, this is not a place that thinks out of the box. So what would be like an example of a custom learning solution that you've provided to one of your customers?
So the different types or the different channels of learning solutions that I create or I design and I develop, they're e-learning courses, they're workshops, they can be webinars, and they can also be reference guides. But what I try to look at is, when I design, is understand really the business behind it. And only if I feel like I am part of that business do I feel like I'm in a position enough to then say, okay, I have an idea of what your business does. I know the processes and the culture of the business, and that's through a series of an analysis, where it's a series of questions for the stakeholders, and then is a series of sometimes interviews to the end users, like the learners, whether it is their teams, whether it is sometimes people are in their warehouse that are probably working with different machines. But it starts really with understanding the why we need that, the how, right, and what's the process behind it. And once I have a good understanding of that, then we can put it into one of those channels, right? And unless a client comes to me with the specific need, I want it in this, I would normally recommend, and it depends with the audience too. If they're salespeople, it's best to have something in person, a workshop where they can practice. If it's just like something that's introductory, a micro course is good for something like that. So it also depends on what the need may be.
Right. So what does that process look like generally? About how long does that kind of take?
So the process can go anywhere. My biggest thing is understanding the client and their need and their business, so that I can then provide those custom solutions. A good amount of the time, it starts with, and it's funny because a lot of people think they take me as like, well, she's a graphic designer, or there's different hats that you wear as an instructional designer. You are the person that does the analysis, and that's your series of questions and interviews. Then you're also the person that puts that proposition together or puts that proposal together. This is what I would recommend, how many modules, what lessons will be in each module, to then also being the project manager, where you perform the analysis, you give that proposition to the client, and then once that process begins in development, it's managing that project, which is here's a prototype. It'll be ready for you by this date. You have X amount of days to review, X amount of days for you to provide the feedback. Then we implement the feedback, and then we continue to the next stages. And managing that project from beginning all the way to end, which is when we implement it, and then we do the evaluation to make sure that it's working. So once we implement it, that workshop takes place, that e-learning course gets sent to the learner, and that's the implementation part. And then eventually we do the evaluation. Like, is it working? Are we seeing the metrics change? Are we seeing an improvement in performance? So that's the evaluation piece.
Okay, cool. So, I mean, as a former graphic designer, you mentioned that it's not just about being like graphic design.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like, talk to us a little bit more about how it doesn't have to be fancy in order to be effective.
100%. And so that was the other piece I was going to mention. I'm so glad that you brought me back to that, because as an instructional designer, and what I find with other instructional designers is they focus so much on how it looks like and the aesthetics and how cool is coded, the graphics, that they forget the foundation of the training, right? What is it that we're trying to explain to them? What are the processes what story are we telling? Are we giving them the why is important, the what we're doing, and are we giving them something that's actionable that now they can take with them and apply when they go out into the real world? And that's where a good amount of the instruction, I believe, gets missed, because people think, well, she's a video, editor, she's a graphic designer. We have a little bit of everything in instructional design, but we have instructional designers that are very strong at one thing but miss the other. So I'm a true believer that having the experience in working not just in academia, not just in a specific area, working in creating content development and training development in different areas, different industries, from pharmaceuticals to sales to banking. It's best when you're not so close to the content, because when you're so close to the content, you miss things, right? So me being in banking, when I go into a banking client, I try to be very cognizant to not sit there and get Reg E, Reg D, I know the fair lending part of it. So I try to not, because that's the flaw of being so close to the content versus when you're not. You can truly, it's like the outside lens looking in. It's so much better.
Well, one of the best things about being a creative person, I find, is like when someone gives you a box and says, create within this box. And that's the best thing, because sometimes when people just say, okay, I have no idea what I want, I don't know where the vision is, I don't have all these different things, I need you to figure it all out. And it's like, okay, well, now you're forcing me, the designer, to make all these executive decisions. And it's like, there's so many different pathways that we can take that chances of me hitting that target, very little. So whereas like if you get a box and say, have a company that says, we have this vision, this is what we want our people to look like, be like, who we want to hire, how their behaviors are, those are the types of things that we're looking for in this training. And you're like, perfect. Now I can create and make something effective and look nice within that box. And that's where we're going to really get that efficiency and excellence out of it, is more than it's just going to look nice because you didn't really have any direction for anything, because I can make it look pretty, but it has zero substance to it whatsoever. But the ability to make it effective and look good, where your people aren't going to be like, oh, this looks like it was done in Microsoft Word circa 1995, so
or
it's
PowerPoint, which it's okay, but it has to, I feel like, and you're right, it has to hit the mark. There's two aspects of that. One is when they come to you and they think they know. And sometimes where I'm like, so it's not that. I did the full analysis. I'll give you an example of that. I had a client that came up to me and they said they wanted training because their team, they were not achieving a 5-star review. So I said, okay, let me go and interview your team, your project managers, and we'll see what hurdles they have. What are some of the things that are probably preventing them from achieving that 5-star review? Well, it turns out that the team didn't even know that they weren't achieving a 5-star review. They didn't know why I was there to interview them and supposedly give them training. So sometimes people think they need something when they don't. Sometimes in this case specifically, they needed it was more communication with the management was not connecting with their team. They were avoiding having that tough discussion.
For sure.
And sometimes they do. Sometimes when they do know what they want, it's great. That analysis uncovers that. But that's another reason why I always say never skip the analysis, because when people come to you with something, it's usually that, it's usually not that, or sometimes it's a mix of that and something else.
Right.
So I always say never skip the analysis, just because that's really what creates that foundation of that training effective.
Yeah. And ultimately, like, you have a lot of business owners who think that they know everything.
Yeah.
And they're just going to bring you in and you're just going to design the thing that they come up with that's works for them. But it's also, especially with the difference in generations, the difference in peoples, the difference in learning abilities and preferences, it's more about like, how do you meet people to an extent where they are and find that middle ground where it's not like, I'm going to cater to every single individual that comes in here, but how do you meet Gen Z where they are, and millennials where they are, and boomers where they are, where you have to be able to do something that all of them can understand and grapple with, and they're all going to have a different way that they're going to process it best.
100%. 100%. That's when I always talk to people and I say, you know, we as instructional designers, it's our duty and it's our job, because really when you lose that effectiveness, you also lose the trust. When you lose trust, for example, whenever I had to take that training, they had completely lost my trust, because I knew that it was going to be the same 30-minute video that I'm just going to sit through. It's going to end. One module is going to end. I'm going to hit next. And I'm going ahead and, you know, going on to help my tellers because they have a line out the door, open a register and start taking customers to take down that line, come back, check the computer, hit next, and then leave and go do something else. So they had essentially lost my trust. And that's why I always tell people, when your people deserve better, your clients deserve better, because there's a lot of complex concepts out there that, especially within tech, that clients don't understand. I don't know how to use the software. And when you establish something that you're going to say, hey, this is going to help you, and it doesn't, you've lost their trust. And the same thing goes with teams. Oh, this is going to help you onboard, but it really doesn't. It doesn't hit the mark, or with their performance.
Right.
You've lost their trust. They're going to sit there and going to say, this didn't do anything. I just zoned out for 30 minutes, checked my text, my email, and done. You check the box, you know? So that's where you really, what's at stake is people's trust, your team's trust, your client's trust, when you don't do things intentional and with the right foundation.
And ultimately, like, the people that, especially for a retail store, you know, the people that are on the floor are your champions. They are supposed to be the people that believe in your business almost as more than your executive branch, you know. But if the people in your store don't understand why they're doing what they do, you know, like, I've worked for a big box retail store where they had just like check boxes and just like keep going. And like, legitimately, it was like my first full week was just sitting in front of a computer with headphones on. I fell asleep.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I just legitimately fell asleep. And like, you know, nobody really said anything about it. It was never like a bad thing, but it was just like, then once I'm out on the floor, it's like, you know, like,
they don't,
this
much
job
they
can
care.
go one way or the other.
Exactly.
And it's like, you're not getting the people that are going to exude the vision of your business.
Yes.
Where if they don't believe in it, if they're not that champion, you're going to lose more customers, because that person on the floor could just be like, all right, bye, see ya. Have a good day.
100%.
Sorry, I couldn't make your dreams come true, or like find that part for you, or find this thing on the shelf or something like that, where like you're losing more customers that way. Whereas like, if you go to a restaurant and people are like, oh my God, this server is the best person, they were so helpful, they go and write a review. Now you're going to get 10 more people coming into that store because they had such a good experience. Whereas when you go to the big box store, somebody's like, oh, this person in electrical is the most useless person that I've ever met in my entire life. Stay away from this store. Now you're going to get 10 people that are like, oh, I'm not going to that store. I'll go to a different one, or go to the local hardware store or something.
That's such a great point.
You're losing more people because you're not training your people.
And that's really the heart of your business, right? And if you're not investing in that heart of your business, what's making it with your end user, which is your clients and your customers, that's a great point where you're going to lose. You're trying to save money because you want to make money, but now you're not investing where it truly matters. And it does show. Yeah. It does show.
Now, one of the topics that you kind of bring up is using content as a connection. And can you like not just as an instruction, but what do you kind of mean by that, and elaborate a little bit more?
When I look at content, right, a good amount of the time I find that content is built, it's kind of talking at you instead of you learning from it, taking me through a scenario, learning what to do, and that empathy. It's important too, because what I do when I start working with a client is I make sure that the content aligns with their end users, but also I have to empathize because they don't understand where I'm coming from. They don't understand why I'm asking things, right? So I have to empathize with them. And the same goes when you're building content for their users. You have to empathize and understand what are they experiencing day to day? Who are they seeing? What are their hurdles? Because if I don't understand that, then guess what? I'm going to totally miss the mark when I'm building content. So, and I'm going to give you an example of that. For example, I build content for a warehouse where they were bringing a new piece of equipment, and this new piece of equipment did 4 different functions, right? This was coming, the manufacturer was in Boston, Massachusetts. This is like a $1 million, if not more, piece of equipment. This is kind of intimidating as an operator. If I'm a technician, or even if I'm an operator of this piece of equipment, if I don't get the proper training, right? Yeah. So talk about really being expensive. Yeah. Right? It could lead it to expensive mistakes. Mm-hmm. I went to the manufacturer in Boston and I took a video of this piece of equipment. How do we start it? How do we shut it off? How do we troubleshoot it? Because only if can I truly understand how this piece of equipment operates, what are the functions, and what do we need to do if something happens and something goes wrong? And doing that gave me that true, that aha moment where now I am like one of those technicians, right? I'm putting myself now in their shoes. I mean, literally in their shoes, PPE equipment and everything full on just to go on the floor and document this. So coming back and bringing all this knowledge, I was in a better position now. I have the option to just take videos and create content from those videos, or take a trip to Massachusetts and actually film this. And why would I miss that opportunity? I have the opportunity to see this and ask the technicians from that manufacturer on how to operate it, the technicians and the mechanics. Right. It was a whole different, right? When I'm building content, I'm building the SOPs, I'm creating the schedule to train the employees. It's built with intention, right? Now I'm creating the videos to help them understand at a high level how this piece of equipment works. What are the 5 different functions with this piece of equipment? And how will they start it? How will they, troubleshoot it? And how will they shut it off? It's not just here's a video and take a look at it, or here's an SOP. It's a very different. Now I'm able to create content it's a lot more reflective of that equipment.
And if that manufacturer were to do that, it wouldn't have that same effect, because they're not thinking of it to an extent in terms of the end user. Yes. They're thinking of it in terms of the manufacturing side. Here's why we do X, Y, and Z. And to the person that's just driving it around, I don't care why you did X, Y, and Z. Yes. I just want to know, if this happens, what do I do? Yep. Because as a business owner, especially if you spend $1 million on a certain piece of equipment, I can't be thinking in the back of my mind, what if my team messes this up every single day? I need them to be more trained than anybody else in the entire world, yes, that they can take it and adapt it. And God forbid, one person leaves. I can't have one person with that knowledge because they were the only person that learned or took the time on their own to figure out. Like for me, when as a graphic designer, I've worked in multiple places where we had these big, huge printers. Nobody ever took the time to learn or understand how these printers worked, or why they jammed up, or what the issues were. And if it wasn't for me just taking like a few minutes and being like, oh, well, it jams up because this is wrong, or it's out of ink here, but like these are printers the size of this room. And it's not just like you hit print and your HP just goes. These are like massive machines that if something goes wrong, now you need to bring in a servicing company. And now we're down for the next 2 days because our giant printer has a jam that would have taken 16 seconds if somebody would have just taken the time. And so like when only one person has that knowledge, like say I wasn't there, now that printer's down.
Yep.
And I'm getting phone calls on my off day. And, you know, if I'm in love with the company, I might take that phone call.
Yeah.
If I'm on vacation, I might not be taking that phone call.
100%,
And
yes.
it's like your whole business can't be restricted because of one person's knowledge in some way, shape, or form. And also try getting a hold of the manufacturer.
Oh,
You know, try and get a hold of them and their tech person. And oh, wait, sorry, Jan is on vacation this week and she can't help you out. And it's like, okay, well, now I'm losing millions of dollars in business because this one thing isn't going right. And it probably could have been a fix,
100%.
could have been a short fix. I could have gone down to the hardware store. We could have had a plethora of parts.
Yeah.
Just because we know these are the things that tend to go wrong. Here's how we fix them. And 5 people on the team are trained on it.
yeah, exactly. And this is the thing too, when you think of the end user, after going through all this training, talk about what I love the most is how empowered they feel, right? And how confident they feel. Like if you get the training, the step-by-step training, and I'm not saying, and this is where my biggest gripe is, less is more, right? It's not just a large amount of content. Here's a bunch of, we did training, you know, we gave you 5 booklets for you to study. We did training. Like that's it's not that. It has to be training that makes sense, that's actionable for what they do within their environment. And that person is in a better position, 1, to stay with your company, 2, to move up within your company, and 3, to also help create the training and the content for others, not for them to train the next person. Because that's the other gripe that I have is let's take Susie off the floor to train and onboard the new team members that we have coming in. That's not training, and that's not the right framework and mindset either. It's about having a proper system that's documented so that if this person does decide to leave, you have already a system in place to onboard the next person, and that person is that much more in a better position to onboard, have within the amount of time, whether there's 30 days or the first 3 months, they're doing good, and you have a nice plan for them. And this is where I feel like it's another area that it gets missed, is when we onboard people, right? Let's just take someone off the floor and let's just train them. That's not training. We went through a series of schedules where, for this particular situation, we had the technicians first observe how we had instructors that came in, and we showed them the process. How do we start this piece of equipment? If this happens, this is how you troubleshoot it. Sometimes these are the 3 components where you'll find that it'll misfire. And if you solve one of those, look at these 3, and one of those 3 is usually the case. What we saw was an understanding. And then we said, now it's your turn to certify, right? But we're certifying with an SOP as well. So now they're observing, they're performing, and now they're certifying. Now you're doing a series of tasks that we're observing you do, and then only when you pass are you certified to now operate this piece of equipment, right? And if you don't pass, that's okay too. We'll go back to the areas that maybe you might have missed. We can hone in, and we can make sure that now you recertify again. That's a proper, right? You're just much more empowered. You're in a better place to be able to move forward. I just feel that it's sadly oftentimes those things get missed.
It's definitely one of those things that gets missed. And really what happens is you'll have people that have been doing it for a certain amount of time that they'll kind of get to a point of like, oh, I figured out a little hack here and a hack there and a thing here and a thing there that makes the job easier or in some way, shape, or form, or like, this is more efficient for me.
Yes.
And how do you quantify those things if you're not, one, aware of them, as a training person? Sometimes you'll have people that they might be the best salesperson in your entire company. Horrible manager. Horrible at like training the next person. Like they can do the task, but Can they be the most effective teacher to the next person? Not always. Sometimes you'll find it with like sports. It's the guy that barely made it out of the minors that sometimes becomes the best coach.
Best coach.
And then you have the greatest player in the world that tries his hand at coaching, and it's just like, why can't they do the thing that I do all the time? Like, and they don't understand so many other facets of coaching and bringing people along in that. And so it's like, as a business owner, you need to know all these different things. Those are different factors that you have to bring in, and just taking one person and saying, you're my best sales guy, I'm going to make you sales manager. So that way you could train everybody else on how to do it. And then the sales all your sales department now goes downhill because your best salesperson isn't selling. And suddenly you're like, why is this failing? And it's like, there's 100 reasons why it's failing, but also nobody knows what to do. And when you do train people, especially in that first 30 days, you're going to get somebody that says, okay, I know exactly what is expected of me at bare minimum for the next 90 days. This is the things that I need to do and focus on and train on. And here's how I get better. And then now I can see a pathway of where I can go in this company, where most people, they get a job, they get put into a listless position or trained halfway on something, and they're like, I have no idea what I'm doing. And then they're right back on Indeed.
100%.
And they're looking for the next thing because this company has no idea what they're doing, let alone what I'm going to be doing at this company. So it's like, how can I affect change if I don't even know what the job is, or you come in, you're hired for one position. They're like, oh, but we also need you to do X, Y, and Z for these 3 other things. And it's like, I thought I was just going to be doing this. So it's like that clarity isn't there, and it's just not, to an extent, kind to that person. And that's why you're not getting people that stay for longer than that 180-day period, because they're like, I don't even know what the expectations are. There's no metrics. There's nothing saying these are the tasks that you need to do. Get the first 5 done, boom, done. Okay, great. Now we can add on another 5 tasks. And
gradual, a gradual process. And that's why I always say having an onboarding process. And I know that, especially an accountant, like we have an onboarding process for the clients, right? When we onboard someone, we get your financials. It's a whole onboarding process there. But a good amount of the times if we're doing that for our clients, why are we not doing that for our teams? It would only make sense. You have a 30-day, you have a 60, you have a 90-day. Who do you go to if you have a question? Who's your mentor? What's expected of you? What are the tasks? How does our vision as a company, right? This is what makes us tick. This is who we are. Our products and services. Why do we believe in them? All that makes a difference. Guess what? That's a bigger buy-in. We have an audience here, sorry.
So one of the things that the story really highlights is the difference between information and usability. So what are some of like the red flags that you see when it comes to that, like a training program is going to fail before it even gets off the ground?
So one of the things when I look at, for example, if I'm doing an audit, when I do an audit, one of the things that I look for is it telling me the story? What story is it telling me? Are the end users going to understand why is this important, right? First of all, why is this important? Because a good amount of the times people don't even understand why, right? So why is this important? What does it look like now? What's the vision that we're looking what's the vision that we have for this training post-implementation? Post-implementation. What is the vision that we have right now, right? Like, so this is where we stand. Where do we want to be? And that usually dictates the direction that we move forward, whether it is in a workshop, in a webinar, in a reference guide, or in an e-learning course. Sometimes is a blended approach. It's a blended approach with those solutions. Sometimes we integrate reference guides into those e-learning courses where we tell them what the situation is. We give them branching scenarios, what it's like in your day. And I make sure that I put something very similar to what they do. If it's a call center, it's a gloomy day, you get a phone call, you have an irate customer, and it sounds like this. And you put that kind of like scenario in there. And then you give them options, because the best piece of learning is you're not just being told what to do, you're giving an opportunity to practice, right? So now I just learned my why. I learned what I need to do. What are the steps? What are the processes? Let me put this into action. Now let's test your knowledge. Does that make sense? What would you do? And I put at least a couple of different solutions, right? And somewhere in there, it's the right solution. But the branching scenario is, for example, what happens if they select the wrong answer? And what does that look like? So that they get to see, like, oh, and now I know why it's important to not do that.
Right.
Because they're learning while practicing. But some of the things that I do see oftentimes is where it's filled with bells and whistles. It's filled with, and I know you're a video guy, but and I love it, but I truly believe that it has to be intentional. And sometimes when it comes to learning, it has a ton of videos in there, and I don't walk away when I walk away, well, what do I do if I do get a situation like that? I didn't learn that. It didn't mention that. I didn't even practice it, for example. So that's one, when it's the bells and whistles of videos, or the bells and whistles of a lot of interaction, a lot of interactivity where I click, this thing happened, I click, and all these, and it's more distracting than it is helpful. So that's where I say also less is more. Focus on what they need to know, not on the nice to know.
Right.
And that's one of my biggest things. And you'll hear that everywhere I go. Let's focus on the need to know, and let's put the nice to know in a guide. Because oftentimes the biggest problem that I think we have, especially as subject matter experts, and what I mean by subject matter experts, it's the managers, it's the leaders, it's the stakeholders. They're the experts in that content. They're so close to it that they feel like they need to give everything to the end learner or the end user. And that's not always the case. And that's where we end up with content overload and learner overload, where people are just too overwhelmed. So a good amount of interactivity, too much content. The nice to know is in there, and the need to know kind of got just watered away.
It got lost in the shuffle of everything.
Exactly.
And that's like, you're trying to take 10, 15, 20 years of experience and, help somebody out and say, if I would have learned this 20 years ago, I would have been in a better place. But you're losing the core of what you need them to do in those nice to know things.
And you can always do a case study, right? Like
Right.
you can put that nice to know in a case study if you want them to truly kind of get that. Or you can put it in a guide even.
Right.
Something
In a place where they can go and say, okay, I've been on the job for 6 months. I think I'm pretty good.
Yep.
Now I really wanted to know this. Okay, now there's a server that they can go into
Yes.
and it has playlists of,
Task
you're trying to do
related,
this.
yes.
Okay, cool. Or, somebody that's on the floor that wants to become a warehouse manager. Here's the videos that warehouse managers
Yes.
do. And so now as a floor person in my own lunch break or whatever time,
I love that.
I can take 15, 20 minutes and just go and say, okay, what are they doing? How do I get to that level? And can I access that? And that's where those are the nice to knows. And
Oh, I love that.
okay, here's how you have your core of responsibilities, but you want to go up.
Yep.
This is what is expected of you at that next level.
Yes.
Okay. But if I see that and I can access that and I can watch
Yep.
those things, or
That's a great opportunity even for like someone who's maybe up in the next role to be a manager. And that right there would have been like I think that is the right roadmap towards someone who you think could potentially be a good potential leader or manager. I think they should be exposed to that ahead of time. Like, hey, we think, you might be the next person up, but we would like for you to maybe just take a little bit of the training and not post. It should never be post the promotion. And that's when
Right.
it always happens. All that information gets given to them post promotion. And at that point, it's too late. You're an individual contributor, and now you won't, as a manager, you're not relying on your individual skills. You're relying on your team's skills overall. And that's where that gets missed. And those nice to know should be given to someone, for example, especially management, ahead of time prior to promotion, just so you know if you truly want this or not. It shouldn't be post. It's too late at that point,
Right. So if a business is listening to this right now, what are 3 questions that they should really be asking themselves on and their training's not working?
Yeah. So what I would say is if you look at your performance, right? If you find that there's performing gaps, for example, if you're seeing your team, if you're finding common mistakes that continue to happen, and you're just like, I just don't know why, that's definitely a knowledge gap there. The next thing I would say is if you're seeing some level on if you have surveys, if you have maybe feedback from your clients or from your customers and it's not good, that could be an also indicator that there could be some performance gaps there too. And the last one that I would say is, survey, customer feedback, if you're seeing common mistakes being made. Or the last one I would say is if you're finding that you're getting feedback, whether it is from the manager or you're getting feedback from even your team themselves, where they're coming to you and they're saying, hey, listen, I'm having a hard time, or I'm not understanding this, or this is something that I find challenging. That's like the first indicator where you're like, maybe we need to put something in place. And it's not Susie who's already doing the work. That should not be the answer.
Yeah. So if a business owner is listening to this and, they want to take away one thing from this conversation, what is like the one key thing that they should be remembering when it comes to training and getting a lot of these SOPs set up as quickly as possible?
What I would say is there's always, when you're working with your teams, right, they deserve better, right? Don't just give them whatever because you want to just check off the mark, the box, but make sure that you're giving them whatever you're giving them is with intention. And don't forget there's always training audits out there. I conduct training audits before. If there's already training in place, and a good amount of the times they're like, you know what, I haven't gotten that looked at in a while, I do training audits. Or if it's a matter of, I'm not sure what that would look like, I give kind of a vision of that as well if that's needed. But what I would say is whatever you give to some people deserve better out there. And especially if they have the will, you don't want to lose that. And whatever you do give to your teams, whether it is your teams or your clients, make sure it's with intention.
And one last thing, in the world of AI that we live in, where everybody just wants to type in a couple of sentences.
I could do training with AI.
Yeah. And it's like, what is the difference between, say, a customized program versus a mid-level prompt that you can put into an AI engine?
So there is a prompt with AI, and there's also those library courses that the learning management systems are usually the systems that bigger companies usually purchase. And these trainings, it's like 3,000, 4,000 courses in there, and it's just a one size fits all. So that doesn't work. To the AI prompts, it doesn't, and the AI chatbot can't do an analysis, right? The chatbot cannot ask the series of questions that you usually ask when you're doing the analysis to identify even the problem. So you could miss potentially what you truly need to train on, or you can develop also content that's very broad, that doesn't hit the mark with your people. So again, that one size fits all comes back again with AI. So I always say we can use the AI, and it's more of an assistant than it is a training creator.
Right.
Because that's where now you lose trust with your teams by relying on just an AI chatbot. It can help, but it's not the end or all. And that's why people say, well, do you think AI is going to be done with our jobs? And I'm like, it's impossible. A chatbot, it's helpful. AI is super, super helpful, but I don't believe that AI is one that will be designing and creating relevant content that's custom to that business needs.
Yeah, it's a tool, just like anything else. It's not the solution to all of our problems all at once. Even with the improvements that they make, again, it's not catering to the different types of people, the different nuances in your business versus another business that does the same task that you do. So there's a lot of different nuances. And if you're not getting a customized solution of somebody who's on the ground
Yes.
looking at your business and seeing your people and talking to them and
Yes.
speaking and hearing those lived experiences, just putting a really good prompt into
It's
ChatGPT
not
is not necessarily going to get the same
100%.
result in any
100%.
way. But it might be great of like, I really want to say this. How do I say this better? That's what you use AI for.
Yes.
But it's not, hey, I really want to come up with SOPs for my business and just type in a couple of sentences and like, boom, you're just getting a brrr. All right, cool. Like I got my SOPs, like just check off that box and, think that everybody's just going to be like, oh yeah, cool. He did it. So now we're great. Everything's perfect
Yeah.
because he just did it in 15 seconds and saved a couple of bucks.
Exactly. So here's a perfect example of that. I just did I took on a client who had 35 modules of training. 35 modules. No, I actually think it was 37 modules of training. And the vision was, well, it's very textbook written. And we're just finding that people are coming back. They did surveys, so kudos to them. They did surveys, and the responses, it was exactly that it was too textbook, and it was too long. Some things didn't work properly. So we took the course and we said, why don't we make this course that's more applicable? This was a course that it was for special needs.
Mm-hmm.
How do you, as a swim instructor, how do you help children with special need? And that, seeing the 37 modules and turning that into 7 modules. And the 7 modules consisted of a very high level overview of what are some of those diagnoses, right? It was epilepsy, it was autism, it was Down syndrome, to what are the characteristics that you'll find in those symptoms, right? And then what are the different characteristics within a child that you can expect? Then we turn it into, as an instructor, what can they take with them, and how can they apply these in a pool? With that comes with IEPs, taking a look at IEPs that come from the school, high level, how to understand them, how to establish a relationship with the parent, communication with the parent, creating an action plan with the parent, including the parent throughout that entire process, right? Also understanding from a very high level the characteristics of Down syndrome. And I learned so many things where, for example, the muscles and the muscles and the body they're very fragile. So warm water is highly recommended, right?
Yeah.
With autism, sometimes there's triggers in the water or the splashes that can set a child off. So we gave them a good amount of what to look for, what to do in those instances,
Right.
what to do if they're attacked, what to do if they're held by someone from the back. So there were a series of actionable items that we were able to put in this training from 35 in 7, where it's not about just making it shorter, it's about making it intentional, more actionable, is something that they can apply day to day, that they're going to experience on a day-to-day basis. And then we combine that with a workshop. So we did 7 modules, and after those 7 modules, you're going to go into a workshop and you'll get to practice these. You get to practice these in the pool. So that was something that that was a great example, I think, from creating something with intention, where you're creating it for the end user, and it's not just to have it because you want to check the box.
Right. And then that's a perfect situation of like more of need to knows
Yes.
than nice to knows.
Yes.
Because even the nice to knows is always going to cater to whatever individual is in there,
Yes.
that situation,
Yeah.
whether the person that is training or the person being trained.
Absolutely.
They're both going to be totally different situations. So you can't train for every single one in a module.
Yeah.
You need to just say, here are the basics. Here's the core. If this happens, here's how to redirect it.
Yep.
And then how to move on.
Yes.
And still maintain your course and still keep going with the job and not lose your cool because you're not understanding what somebody else is putting out there and how to cater to that individual.
100%.
And that makes a better person overall. That's going to, like I said before, like you're going to get a champion. somebody that truly believes in the mission of your business, the vision that you as the business owner have kind of set out there and said, this is why I started the business. I didn't
Yes.
do
Yeah.
it to make money.
No. Yep.
Money is the byproduct that keeps it going and growing, but I didn't do this particular thing
Yeah.
to just make buku bucks and
Yeah.
just sit on my,
No.
sit back and just like relax. It's now you're getting champions that are going to take your business and say, if one of those instructors moves to another place and says, I really want to take this concept and expand it.
Yes.
Now, as a business, you're able to grow with somebody who's lived it and been in that situation and felt your vision and says, I share it.
Yes.
Let's continue it. Let's grow it. So it's more than just training somebody to do a job. It's
Understanding.
it's understanding, it's getting a champion in your staff that are going to be the face of your business whenever they see a customer.
Yes.
And have somebody in there. So if somebody is listening and thinking, this is exactly what my business needs, and how do we incorporate this? What is the best way for people to get in touch with you?
So you can reach me. I'm on LinkedIn. You can find my page on LinkedIn. You can also, it's Elisa Cruickshank. You can also find me on my website, ecdlearning.com. And you can also reach me through email. So it's Elisa Cruickshank at ecdlearning.com.
Awesome.
It's
I really
long,
appreciate you.
but we'll have it on there. So thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I really appreciate you coming in. It's definitely a learning process when it comes to this. And, I need to do more in my business. And I'm sure 99% of people need to do more of this in their businesses in order to get to the next level. And it's something that it needs to be updated. It's not just, I did it once 5 years ago. We're cool. Like, have a great day. It's constant moving and motioning with it. So I really appreciate it.
Constant evolution with business, and we should evolve with that as well in training and teaching others for sure.
Absolutely. All right. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
So nice being here.
Yeah.